Hello and good morning and good evening to folks who might be around the world, and welcome to a special edition of the Uncoder on Unqork's Twitch channel. As the banner at the bottom tells you, today we are going to be showcasing our hackathon winner, which we decided in a group, audience vote and a nice panel vote a couple weeks ago on the show with our community leader, Danny. So I just want to first introduce that hackathon winner to you all again, Priyanka Suman. Priyanka, why don't you say hello to everybody?
Sure. Like, thank you for having me here. I'm Priyanka and currently working with Accenture, and it has been 1.5 years. I'm working on Unqork, and I have 6 years of IT experience.
Great, cool. So that's actually where I wanted to go next. So you said a year and change working in Uncork, but a longer career in technology in general. Why don't you, tell everybody a little bit more about life before Uncork?
So I have done my bachelor's in electronics engineering. Then I joined an organization where I was trained in Java for 3 months. Then I have worked there as a backend developer for more than 4 years into Java and database side. Then I joined another organization, which is one of the partner of Uncore, that is KPMG. Since then, my Uncore journey started.
Great. I love to hear that because I was a software engineer before I started working with Uncork as well. I mean, I when I went to school way back in the day, Java was what they taught, and then I picked up another of other languages along the way. And then when you look at the whole world of Uncork creators, there's some that were engineers, right, and have come over and taken their experiences there and applied it to the codeless way of building with Uncork. And then you have the other folks who had little to no background in technology prior to that, and they worked at it. So being someone who did have a technology background and was a developer prior, how do you feel that experience prepared you for developing software with Unqork?
So when I joined KPMG, within a week, I did my Unqork trainings, like a self-learning, and then I did from a novice and a associate certification. I have taken those, and then I was soon onboarded to the client project, and then I got the real-time requirements where my seniors helped me a lot to get familiar with this platform. So we had technical touchpoint sessions where we discussed different approaches to solve those requirements. Since then, I got the hang on of this platform and this technology. So it was interesting since then. So I explored out of curiosity, read about it, did my professional certification as well. Still, I'm undergoing those expert path.
Yeah. So so having programmed before and now use Unqork, what are some of maybe the similarities that you see or the parallels that you see between things that you used to do in code and things that you do in Unqork? Is there some similarity and connection there that might have helped you or not?
Similarity, I think debugging is the similar approach we do. We see the data flow. Even here it is easier to picturize the data flow, visualize through data workflows, I would say. But debugging in Java, it was quite difficult. Like, it would consume a day to debug a piece of code, or where exactly those errors are getting triggered. So it
Yeah,
is
yeah, no, and
interesting.
that's yeah, debugging is a big one, right? Because in the end, you're creating software, so especially software that's in a browser or many times. So some of those similar tools transfer over nicely, and it's great to hear that you feel that Uncle provides a debugging experience that is even better in many ways, and has allowed you to probably be quicker to find those pesky bugs that nobody likes to have to fix.
Yeah.
So. So, what would you say? I always ask, what's your favorite thing about Uncork?
So I think there are many, but I would say marketplace snippets are something which is improving day by day. And we have from small logics to those complex logic, which we don't have to build from scratch, like loops. We have different loops, batch loops, for loops, or API specification. We just have to drag and drop and build our configuration. So I would say that. And also the data workflow, we can actually build anything through data workflow. We can configure it in many ways. And these enhanced grids, I would say, because it has a lot of inline functionalities, we can edit each row based on our indexes. We can configure our own data structure using these grids.
Okay, well, great. Well, that's a perfect segue then into the rest of the Twitch. Will be you really just showing the world how you used those grids and how you created the Expenso app. And that's why I've got my expense report background today, your Expenso app. So why don't we throw your screen back up on here? And yeah, so I'd love, as we kind of talked before this, just for folks who maybe didn't see your presentation a couple weeks ago, walk through quickly the high level of the front end, and then let's shoot over to the back end and let's look and see how you made the magic happen.
Yeah, sure. So this application is all about claiming expenses and reimbursement. So every organization has certain budgets which the employees can claim later after validations. Uh, uh, these amounts will be claimed, and those will be credited to their bank accounts. So this is the employees dashboard. This is the button which allows them to add a new expense report, and these buttons are for editing or deleting the previously added expense report by them. These buttons help them to download Excel report or PDF reports. So on clicking on it, it will generate those. But if we want our PDFs in a proper format, we can go ahead with transforms. So now clicking on this button, this will navigate us to a different screen where the employee can claim their expenses, selecting different type of expenses.
Well, so okay, so you just covered that first dashboard, right? So before we go to
Yeah.
the next screen, let's go into your config and let's look at how you configured that dashboard.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
All right. Cool. So yeah, why don't you walk us through some of it? So you've got a little bit of CSS at the top.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense because it does look great. You added your own nice and quick and easy styling. Love it. So what's that KPI that you're calculating there?
So this is the submissions which are calculating the count of it
Okay.
and just displaying it.
Got it. So for me, I admit, like, I am not an Excel formula whiz. I have a very small knowledge of formulas, and I use the same ones every time, and then try to rely on data workflows and for the rest. So I saw you count A. So what is, like, I know count or I know len. Like, what is count A?
Count A basically calculates the number of outputs which is there. So, and it gets stored in this property ID,
Okay,
which we display here.
got it.
This is the KPI panel, and this is the output which we are showing. And there are some icons which I have used,
Hmm.
background colors.
Yeah, so I love that. I
And
saw you had icons there. You had icons on your buttons. But I do that too. I love throwing in the icons. So for folks that don't know, that FA, right? That's font awesome. So anyone looking, like, what Priyanka did was, did you go to like Font Awesome's website and look up the different icons?
no, I just I was aware of this and I have used this icon,
Got it.
but I
So if
didn't
you
go.
if you go to fontawesome.com,
Okay.
let's open a new tab for folks and go to fontawesome.com. Is it in the same window that you're sharing? Or did you open a new window?
I think. Oh no, it is in different window, but
Can
I'm
you
not
like maybe
able.
attach the tab to the one that has the KPI up? Then it should be shareable to everybody.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Oop. You just need an E after the W in the URL. So AWESOM. Whoop. Whoops. Look like they must have redirect you to WW1. So I guess change the one to a W. Here we go. Live debugging. There we go. Cool. So now click the icons at the top. At the top, there's an icons button. So this is actually everything that you get with Unqork. So you can come in here, you can search for whatever kind of icon you're looking for, and then it'll give you that FA dash whatever. Yeah. So maybe I don't know. Maybe like or click one of the right. Yeah. Here. Perfect. Right. So they'll load and right. So now see it says FA thin FA user. So you can use almost every one of these icons depending on whether it's in some of the newer versions or pro or paid versions. So you get a lot. So like if you're ever looking for an icon for a button, looking for an icon for a KPI like you were, or a chart and things like that, that's what that FA in the classes mean. And you just have the whole world of iconography that you can choose from to really customize your application.
Oh, nice.
Cool. All right, let's jump back to your config then. But I'm sure you can spend hours looking through the icons and try to find the perfect one. You all of
Yeah.
a sudden your ticket, you miss the deadline on your ticket because you spent the whole day looking at font awesome icons.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I would love so as I said, I looked through your config before. I think it's in the data workflow get submissions. Maybe you want to open that up.
Okay. So I think that is in manager's dashboard. Yeah.
Oh, the one I was looking at was in the
The
manager.
other
Okay,
one.
we'll come back to that. So then why don't you just
Yeah.
then go through some of the other configuration and maybe highlight some of the things that like, you thought were pretty slick and cool that you did on this dashboard.
Yeah, so inside this dashboard, this is the personal dashboard. We are getting the submissions from this plugin call, and we are getting all the fields, and I have sorted it through create date, and we are triggering this data workflow, which will do some data manipulation, and it will show those inside the dynamic grid. So it is very simple to append those data or plug in data into this dynamic grid, just a simple data workflow. This is my dynamic grid. I'm directly appending it here and storing it into a hidden field for other KPIs and all, so that I can use those calc KPIs. Later, I'm triggering it these KPIs so that on every edit or deleting submissions, these KPIs will get calculated.
Very smart. I like that.
So inside this dynamic grid, I have these two buttons, edit button and a delete button. So we have custom actions here, and this button style is linked. We can choose any of the button styles we need, and also we can perform other custom actions. This is the initializer I have used for editing the submission. This basically calculates that particular row index and then set to a hidden field,
Mhm.
and then it triggered this rule after calculating those submission id, saving it here. It opens the dashboard, like it opens those workflow submissions, and from there we can just go ahead and edit our submission workflow
Got it.
submissions.
So I saw you had in this decision there, you had some grid syntax. So if you
Yeah.
could pull that up. And for folks who, might have missed some of our previous Twitches on it, talk a little bit about, what that means and what that got you.
So the button which I'm clicking it here, so this selects that particular index. So in this case, maybe I will share that UI first.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the button which I am clicking it here. It picks up that particular row index. So this picks that index, and we can edit, and we can actually open a submission, workflow submission, on clicking on that button, that particular row button.
Got it. So
So
right.
we
So
have
that
dynamic index.
that hashtag, like an Instagram, right? Like hashtag dynamic grid, hashtag, Unqork, hashtag codeless. That hashtag is the current index.
Yeah, that is the current index.
Said you want the row, and then you went hashtag
And
turn
opening
index
the page.
versus, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's so powerful, right? To be able to select it. And I think you can also put in like specific rows, like 1, 2, 3, depending on, but most of the time, I feel like you're always going to want that really dynamic nature of it. It is the dynamic grid, right?
Yeah. So we can perform these inline functions, picking up those index.
Mm-hmm.
And even for delete, I have done the same, calculating the submission. So this calc set submission calculates that particular row ID and sets the value in the submission ID.
Great.
From there, yeah, this is the plugin which will delete that particular submission, and then we are post trigger this, we are triggering this plugin so
Mhm.
that our KPIs get calculated.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it,
Super dynamic, right? You delete,
yeah,
and then you get the new set of data, everything recalculates in it. Because if you delete it and everything stayed the same, so it's super dynamic. I love that.
yeah.
So in your initializers, the ones that you showed, they were mostly just triggering things, right? Which is what I use my initializers most for as well, right? Most of the time I'm triggering with my initializer. What are some of the things, like, is that typically how you use initializers, is really to trigger, or do you use it for other things as well?
For mostly we use for loading the page initializer. So we have this new submission and edit submission. So for loading that page, we can go ahead and use these new submission, edit submission, and trigger some logics here, and from there we can go.
Right. Okay, so it's mostly, either on the load of a page or on a certain action, call other components to do calculations, logic, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Cool. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you did the Excel and the PDF exports? Those are cool.
Yeah, so these are the two buttons. I have just added these buttons, and this trigger a data workflow, which basically filter out the null values. So the fields which we don't want, we can just add a omit, which I have done in other buttons in other dashboards. So I will show that later. So this is the output, converting that to an HTML table. So basically it converts the table into HTML content, and then I am setting this into an output hidden field. And these outputs, this is the output, and later after this initializer get triggers, which watches for this output hidden field,
Yeah.
and then triggers the content panel. And from there I have added ng bind HTML, which actually binds the content into HTML element, and I have displayed the output here.
Got it. So this is what I love. I learn things when I look at folks, smart folks like yourself doing configuration. So I never even really thought to use an HTML table. Like, duh, I always write some kind of like, HTML myself in a content component. It makes so much more sense to use a data workflow. So it's a great usage of HTML table. And then, so when you trigger, if you check the include Excel download link and then you trigger that content component, it downloads the Excel.
Excel, yeah. And
Oh,
for PDF, we enable this. So I will show you
okay. So
that
same
as well.
concept, right? So
Yeah,
you did it as an HTML table output, but then you checked that box. So then when you triggered the content component, it downloaded the PDF of that HTML.
yeah.
Very cool. I tell you, I had no idea you could do that in Unqork. I love it. I know you can trigger a content component. Wild. Super cool stuff.
Yeah, so this was all about this personal dashboard and employees dashboard. So now coming to this button, this button will actually navigate us to another tab where I have configured everything through workflow, where employees can add expenses, different type of expenses here. So it has expense sheet and a summary screen. So this button will navigate us back to our personal dashboard, employees dashboard. So if we want, we can go back.
Mm-hmm.
So this drop down help us to select the type of expense. It can be a car expense, meal expense, telecom, and other expenses. So for every section, I have different freeform grids. While adding rows to it, you will see different inputs which user will fill according to the type of expenses. So for car expense, we are having this charge code. The type is fuel, toll, or parking. We can select anything. We can give amount which we are charging and uploading a receipt for it. So these are the marketplace snippet I have used for single upload. So once one upload is done, it will disable further uploads.
Oh,
Now
cool.
saving it. And also we have to select a date range for which we are charging or which we are claiming for this expenses. So even this is a marketplace snippet I have used it. These are the date filters. So we can have a previous year, previous month, or a custom date we can add. So I'm selecting a previous year now. Now go, and also you will see this summary of all the tables, like it is a custom summary for all the different type of expenses. So now adding a meal expense here, charge code, amount. These are the different user experience for meal expense. We can add type of meal, number of attendees, a proper invoice number, a valid one, and we can upload receipt. So only single receipts are allowed for each row. So we can have multiple rows here. Like we can give certain validation error for, like we can limit our number of rows, but for in my case I have not done that, but we can restrict our number of rows. Adding a telecom expense. So since we are working from home, we can add a mobile bill or internet bill. So connection type, service provider, invoice number, GST number, and we can add comments too. Uploading a receipt, saving it. So you can see this section total. Since we added 200 for telecom expense, it shows here, and this is the final amount which gets calculated after adding each row. So I will show those custom buttons while showing the config. So this is the final amount which employees can claim. Now they can go ahead and add in other section as well. After adding it, they can go to the next button, click on this button, and This will show the summary of all the freeform grids we added in previous screen. So this is the dynamic grid. I'm appending all the data here, common data, and these are the receipt. We can just click on these receipt, verify our receipts here. So once verified, we will come back here. We can add approver name and a delegate, so that in absence of the approver, the delegate can also approve and reject the time these expense sheet. So these are the section total, these are the final amount. Once everything is verified, now go ahead and I will click the submit button. This got submitted, and now the manager and the delegate will receive the expense report. So this is the email, they will receive it. So along this has the employee's detail and the date on which they have submitted it, also along with the manager dashboard link. So now I will show the workflow configuration here.
Yeah, I had even forgotten that you used the workflow. That made it even that much better of a submission, that you combine multiple grids with workflow. And I also love how you took the data from one grid and then displayed it in another grid, like showing how versatile they are, and they're really just different experiences for a very similar data structure dependent upon your UI needs.
It is taking some time.
Yeah, my internet's a little slow now too. Well, because you're located where? You're in India, correct?
Yeah, I'm in India currently,
Where in India, if you don't mind my asking?
from Jharkhand, Ranchi.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I think you're in the training environment.
Yeah, I'm in the
Yeah,
training
I
environment.
think the training environment is located in maybe the U.S. East or U.S. Central region of one of the cloud providers. So you've got a decent hop there. So thank you for bearing with the latency that I'm sure you experience every time you config. But the internet will only get faster and faster, right?
So before going through the path, I want to show this setting, which I think which I faced while building this. So the state control we should enable as manual state control, because when we use those edit buttons or the view button from manager's dashboard or employee's dashboard, I was not able to go to the correct state. So this manual state control helps the user to navigate like freely from one screen to another screen. So we should enable this before setting up our workflow. So this is my sheet, and these are the detail. The screen type is static. We can go through dynamic as well, but depending upon the requirement. So dynamic is basically if the screen has some radio buttons, and based on those radio buttons, if we are triggering some different screen for those radio button, we can go through dynamic. But since on load I have to load this expense sheet, I am going through dynamic screen type. And these are the actions. We can have our custom action by hiding this button, but I have used these workflow button itself. And for this validation, I have enabled this save data on navigation, which stores the data and also create a submission for this workflow path. Same for summary. This The screen type is static, and the actions are same, and but the next button is a submit button. So after submitting, the submission will end, but before ending it will trigger an email here. So I have taken a message node to trigger the email. So these are the data which is coming from our summary screen: the approver email id, delegate email id, and a custom subject with the employee's name. And this is the HTML template which I have added for employees detail and the submit date, and also URL for manager's dashboard, which on clicking on. So this was the email which we have received with the message node. So now coming back to this workflow, now going to this expense sheet. So these are some styling I have used, and this button to navigate back to the personal dashboard. So there is a rule which open up the page for personal dashboard. Also for each screens in workflow, I have taken a hidden field to store the default value of the status, that is pending. And this is the main panel where you might have seen this data workflow actually takes the current name and current email, also the date, but you might have seen this in my UI. Let me share it again. Hmm. So these are the detail, but this when this application get integrated with some organization, we can display like we can integrate those API and fetch the employee name, but currently I am showing the current user. So once it is integrated with any organization, we can fetch those data from API and display those detail.
Cool. Ooh, is that a plane flying overhead?
Yeah.
All right. You know, busy airport maybe. A lot of people flying around there, I'm sure. I only thought it was in New York you get the sounds of the city, but I'm sure you've got some big busy cities over there.
Yeah, I stay nearby airport.
Hey, convenient when it's time to travel for sure. I should move to an airport. I feel like I'm always on the road. It'd be super convenient if I didn't have to sit in traffic for an hour to get to the airport.
So these are the drop downs which shows different. So these are the values I have used for drop downs, and then I am displaying these expense type, hiding and showing those panels based on this value. And this is the date range filter I have used from snippets. So these are the date filters which I have used, so I have customized according to my requirement here. So we can add our own validation here, but we can get entire date filter snippet from here. And this is the rule which calculates the amount. We can sum all the amount and display that. So we have seen that there is section total and the entire total amount which is displayed. So I am doing this with the CSS and this rule. Yeah. So these are the different panels for each section. So inside the first panel, we have our free from grid. So this is the summary view. So we can have our custom summary, the charge code type and amount we can show. And I have chosen the summary view as table, and we can use row as well. These are the custom detail view. We can have a accordion, a model, and a sidebar. So I have used a model here. We can have our custom button and we can add our own styling to it. So these are the button, and these are the trigger types. So when the row is saved, it there's a data workflow which calculates and aggregate the total amount. And also when the row is deleted, this gets trigger again, and this rule final amount get recalculated again on deleting it. So these are the fields which I have dragged for using charge code type amount, and this is the section for uploading receipts. So these are the data workflow which trigger on for calculating the amounts. So this is the uh, free from grid input, and it is always a best practice to add clean keys to filter
Yeah.
out the null values.
Look at that.
And
You're a double under. So gotta ask a question. The double underscore null double underscore.
okay, so it can be like normal null, but since I have started using this, like from my coding standard, I have used this. So, but we can have null as well. So we can use amount equal to null. It will filter out those null value as well, and it picks the amount
Oh,
after filtering the null. It
yeah.
picks the amount and does the aggregate, and once it does the aggregate, it will store in a hidden field.
Cool. So yeah, so I know I dropped off for a second there. I think my internet went out for a second. But the reason I asked about the double underscore null is because when I started in Unqork, 4 years ago, basically, and I needed to clean keys in a data workflow, I used double underscore null, double underscore. And then there was another solutions architect had started at the same time as me. And we were talking one day, and we're talking about clean keys, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I do double underscore null double underscore." And I was like, "That's what I use, double underscore null double underscore." And then you said you use double underscore null double underscore. It came from your programming background, and all of us kind of came from the programming background. So
Yeah,
thinking back to some of the like when I was asking you earlier on, like how maybe software development impacts how you build an Unqork. Like that's an example of I think something that you used to do because double underscore is a convention. It often means like constants or private variables. It's also something that's not null could also be an actual value. Double underscore null double underscore is not typically going to be a real value in any use case, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So like it comes from those coding standard, but we can use anything
sure,
like a
of course.
normal null.
Yeah. Yep, you can use double underscore frog, double underscore, have fun with it. But but it's just funny that having that background, we all kind of landed in the same place in Uncork. So I'm just looking at the clock. This has been super interesting, but I know we want to try to keep the time not too long. I did mention about that group output. I would love it
Yeah,
if you could go show folks the group output that you used, what you did with it, and then I think we're gonna have to wrap up for today. But this has been
yeah.
really fun.
So this is the manager's dashboard. When clicking on this, we will go to. So basically, I use those group output for enabling and disabling those buttons, which I think it will load here. Those approve and decline buttons. Yeah. So for group outputs are used for these disabling feature. So maybe I will show the config here.
Yeah, folks should pay real close attention here. That is, I didn't see the front end of it, and that is really cool.
So after getting the data from the plugin, this is the data workflow where we will process those buttons. So directly from this plugin, we are appending to the dynamic grid. But for those buttons on load, I faced this issue while configuring it. On loading those buttons were getting enabled. So I have filtered out those statuses and created and used a create field, which actually helps. This group output helps to enable and disable multiple like components, these values and those actions, so we can do through group outputs.
Cool, right. So,
And
so
I
the action could be
Yeah,
what? It could be any action, right? Like values,
yeah,
visible, disabled.
yeah. And also we can use like data table if we are using this group output.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you just go back to
even
yeah. So you and then you used the grid syntax in the group output.
Yeah,
That is That is very because you said, okay, for the column of delete, disable it on the index where you filter. So you filtered it down to the ones that you wanted to disable. Then the index was the index of the dynamic grid of that row. So you're saying disable the delete column for whatever the index is of all the ones that were marked as, in that filter.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
That is, I mean, that is pro level uncorking right there. I mean, that is very cool stuff. It is no wonder why you won our hackathon with config skills like that.
So I did for both the buttons, for rejected and
Right.
approved ones, and created these fields and did a group output.
Got it. So in that case, you were disabling the approve if it was already rejected.
Yeah,
Brilliant. I love it. I love it. Great. Well, I mean, I think that's where we got to stop because that again is one of the smartest, slickest configs I've seen in a long time. So Priyanka, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for first off participating in the hackathon. Thank you for really demonstrating the power of the grids and the workflows and that syntax and even other things like the data workflow. Super creative. You did a lot of work. It's a very cool app. I did look, expenso.com is taken, but expenso.io is available. So I say go buy expenso.io. Let's get this thing live for the world. Thanks again. Anything you want to say before we sign off?
yeah. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Maybe we will come up with more applications like this in coming up hackathon.
Yeah, I trust if I believe if there's anyone who will, it's going to be you. So thanks again. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope this was as fun for you as it was for us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, sure.